Hello friends, this is Afnan Khan, research scholar at the ILM Education, and today I bring you a thorough analysis of the IL&FS crisis. Before I start with the video, let me explain you the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video is to make you aware of what's going on in the economy. Because economy is something you become a part of unwillingly. So now that you're a part of economy, everything happening in the economy affects you, directly or indirectly. The best example for this would be the 2008 financial crisis, a crisis which made company bankrupt and a ton of people lost their jobs. Now the question is, were those people only from the finance club or the accounting club, or every type of employee, every type of individual lost his job? So the answer to is, or my advice is to be aware of what's going on in the economy so that you're prepared of the economy. So our purpose at ILM Education is to make you prepare of what's going on in the economy, because we believe that you don't just have a right to education, but you deserve to be educated in the right way. So here's an explanation of one such crisis which I promise you affect you directly or indirectly. So let's start with the discussion. The IL&FS crisis, a crisis which when happened, the share market took a hit by 1100 points. Though there was a default in repayment in the debt market, that actually affected the share market as well. So let's understand what led to that default in repayment and how did it affect the share market. Before directly going into the crisis, let me explain you the business model of IL&FS company. This company is basically involved in the development of infrastructure projects, for which generally the nature of this business is that you need a lot of cash money, liquid cash, for running this infrastructure project. So this company would bring in own capital as well as the bank and financial institutions borrowing. In fact, for the last 2 decades, this was the only company to be involved into infrastructure projects, whereas its peers like ICCI or IDBI banks were involved in the corporate projects. But IL&FS was the only company, and being the only company, it took the advantage of taking in a lot of such projects, and incautiously, for the necessity of having a liquid cash, it took a lot of borrowings from banks and financial institutions to the extent of 90,000 crores. So the point I want to make is to check the progress of the company, status of the company. The debt equity ratio of the company as on 2017 and 18 was 18. Quick FYI, a debt equity ratio is a ratio which measures the relationship between the entity's own capital and the debt it has taken from the outside. So this tells you how much of the debt the company has compared to its own capital. High debt equity ratio tells you that the debt owed by the company is way more than its own equity. So the optimum debt equity ratio a company should maintain is 2. That is, if you have a equity share capital of 100 crores, the debt maximum you're supposed to take is 200 crores. But this company went way too ahead. It took its debt equity ratio, as I said, was 18. So it means that if he had, for example, it had a capital of 100, its debt was around equal to 1800 crores, which was a really bad status of the company, and this was really an unwise decision of the company, because the company was running on such a business type where the lenders are so many and the interest payments and due for those interest payment was so much, the amount due was so much that whatever the profit that company would make, the first right to that profit was to the lenders. So once you make that profit, you're supposed to pay to those lenders. After that, whatever the minimal profit that's left, that is for you. So when there's so much minimal profit, where's the point of reinvestment and where's the point of growth? But this company did sustain its growth over the last 2 decades and was going into and was developing infrastructure projects and was progressing. One thing about this company was the way it used to finance itself. Generally, a tenure of long-term loan is 8 to 10 years, but infrastructure projects requires a time of almost 15 years to complete the project and give you a cash return after the completion of project. But the tenure of these loans were 10 years. What the company used to do was take loan at 0 point, and when the repayment date occurs after 10 years, it used to take another loan for another 5 years. So that would extend the term of the loan for over next to 5 years. So that is what you call refinancing. So what happened? What led to the crisis? In 2013, there was an act passed called the Right to Fair Compensation and Transparency in Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act, which emphasized on fair compensation to the landowners from whom the land was acquired for developing infrastructure projects on their land. So now the fair compensation were way more than what was already given to them as a compensation. The way more than, to the extent, so in the sense it was more to the extent of 17,000 crores. Now they have an additional liability to pay. IL&FS has an additional liability to pay. Those were the claims made by the landowners from whom the land was acquired. Now the IL&FS goes to the government to help it out of such situation, and they went to the government for the rescue because they was already a partner of the government. They were considered, this relationship was considered a pioneer of public-private partnership. The government would use the IL&FS as an instrument of developing India's infrastructure. So there was a failed relationship, there was a failed partnership between the government and the IL&FS. And the IL&FS booked a case, and there's a case going on between the government and the IL&FS, arbitration case, and the claims made by the IL&FS against with the government are to the extent of 16,000 crores. They claim that had the government helped them, made the things easier for them in getting licenses and reducing these claims, or had they helped them in getting license and reducing these claims, and had they made the situation easier for them, they wouldn't have landed into this mess. So, considering all these things, these two things, the banks stopped refinancing these loans as I already mentioned, the IL&FS refinanced the loans for the period of 15 years. The banks stopped refinancing the government, the projects, development projects in the mid, and the banks stopped refinancing. They went to the NBFCs for loan, and they started taking short-term loans from the non-banking financial companies. Now let me explain you the basis of the loan they give, the NBFC give to any of the investor or any corporate person. They give loans on the basis of the credit rating. What is credit rating? Credit rating is a civil score of a company. Like any of you as an individual goes to bank, they check your civil score, and based on that they give you a loan. Similarly, a corporate has a credit rating from a credit rating agency. Now the thing is, these credit rating agencies were giving it a AAA rating, which was supposed to be the highest of the rating. All this was happening, and the credit rating agency, it didn't matter to them, and still they were giving a rating of AAA. On the basis of this rating, the NBFC issued them short-term loans. This crisis was bound to happen. This was supposed to happen because the development projects yield returns over a period of 15 to 20 years, and they took short-term loans to refinance these projects. This was supposed to happen. This had to happen, and ultimately the IL&FS made a default in repayment to sit behind. And then how did the default in repayment, how did that affect the equity market? These NBFCs, 50% of the investments of the mutual funds are made in the non-banking financial companies. The rest are made in the shares. So these mutual funds, when the NBFCs were suffering through this bad beat, the value of the units of these mutual funds were going down, and the company lost trust in the mutual funds, and they wanted the money back from the mutual funds. The people started withdrawing money from the mutual funds, and the mutual funds had to sell whatever they had 50% investment in NBFCs and the rest 50% in the shares. So they had to sell whatever is the shares they had at the price prevailing in the market and give it back to the people. So selling the shares at the price at whatever they are sometimes lead to a fall in the market, because the share may be below the price that they are worth, and selling them at those prices tells you that those shares are saleable at that price. So that caused the fall in the equity market by 1100 points in September 2018. So now that we are done with the discussion, I want to give you 3 takeaways from this session, and something to learn from this video and something to implement in your life, because as we said, you deserve to be educated the right way. The first takeaway will be, never run your business based on debt. The thing about debt is there are fixed interest payment. No matter if you're making profits or losses, you're supposed to make those payments. And especially if you're starting a business based on debts and you need growth, never do that. Because when you start a business based on debt, and there are interest payments, you don't have any profit left for yourself. And when there's no profit left for yourself, there's no opportunity for reinvestment. And if there's no reinvestment, there's no chance of growth. That will be the first takeaway. The second takeaway will be expect the unexpected. Over 2 decades, this company have been developing infrastructure projects, and they might never have thought of this act to be passed, and it did pass, and it cost them a lot. That is 17,000 crores. 17,000 crores, that's a big amount. So when you're aware of what's going on in the economy, you can preserve your business for a long. So the second takeaway will be expect the unexpected, as will be aware of what's going on in the economy. Third takeaway, and the most important one, is the credit rating agency. I'd like to comment something about these credit rating agencies. Interestingly, the 2008 crisis which happened, the similar thing happened. The financial instruments which were not trustworthy were given a credit rating, good credit rating, and based on this credit rating, investors started investing money, and those investors were a lot of money were invested in those unworthy financial instruments. Now if you're going to make investment in those unworthy financial instruments, there'll be a blowback, and you're going to lose a lot of money. And that time the economy lost a lot of money. So aren't we supposed to learn from our mistakes? It's like 10 years and then the same thing happens. This time it's India, and if we don't, shouldn't the credit rating agencies be more careful in now giving ratings? So this is one takeaway for you. Now that you're aware of what's going on in the economy, you're aware that credit rating agencies are not performing their jobs. So now you're aware that these things can't be relied on. So that's the third takeaway and the most important takeaway. Thank you very much.